Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mythic for Operators. Today we're going to be looking at tagging. Now, tagging is available up here in the Operation Tags button. Tags allow you to go through various aspects of Mythic and provide additional contextual information about what operators are looking at. Now, there are two pieces to this. There is the tag type and then the actual tag data. So when we look at the types of tags that we have, we can see here a little chip icon that has a color and some text, the name of the tag. We have a description about what it is, like EDR processes being marked, Objective 1, browser processes, stuff like that. We can see how many things in our operation have these sorts of tags. And then, of course, you can see an example of what that tag looks like in light or dark mode. So with any of these, you can always click modify and change the name, description. You can, in live time, see the change of the color to make sure that it matches what it is that you want to see in light or dark mode. Of course, you can always put in a hex code there too and make it a bit easier. When you're happy with the ones that you have, you can click export, which just saves them all to a JSON file. And then you can click import in a new operation and automatically have all of your tags available for you. The ones you see here, I've done as a combination of manually adding them and adding them via scripting. The scripting aspect of this, though, we'll talk about in a future video whenever we do more of a deep dive into scripting overall. So these are the types of tags. Now let's look at the actual tags themselves, using these to mark pieces of information. If we come over here to our active callbacks, and let's look at this callback 11 for Apollo, where we've issued this PS command. So here, Apollo is using a browser script to go through and take this raw JSON data and dynamically turn it into a table for us. That's fantastic. It's also going through and highlighting some of these rows. So Notepad gets highlighted. We can see here WinLogon, Lock App. The downside is that the color doesn't convey a whole lot of meaning. Like, what is the difference between light blue and dark blue? Or what if there was a green versus the red? You might be able to guess some things, but it's still speculative. Additionally, this data is only available when you have this specific task expanded. If you're looking at another callback or just another task, you might not have this data, and so it's very ephemeral. What we want is to be able to view this sort of contextual enriched data with more meaning and everywhere. So this is where these sorts of tags come into play. So we can see here, let me adjust this to make it a bit easier to see with the video. So here we have the same process data that we saw from Apollo, but now we're viewing it in the process browser. Here we can see the same sorts of tags that have various colors associated with them, but now we already have more context. So here we don't just see a light gray highlighted row, we see Explorer. Oh, okay. And if you click it, you now see the chip name that we saw before, the description. Okay, this is marking Explorer and WinLogon processes. We can see where this came from. Like, why did this get tagged as Explorer? Mythic scripting did this. Okay. If there is a reference URL, then we can see where this is pointing back to. In this case, when I went through and did this with Mythic scripting, I converted a public aggressor script for Cobalt Strike into Mythic. And so the reference for why some of these are highlighted the way that they are is referenced back here. You can see it down here at the bottom, this process tree CNA file. So you click it, you go back to there. Similarly, if you have additional data that you want to provide, this can either be just flat text ASCII data, or if you provide JSON, Mythic will automatically turn it into a table like this. Here, we're simply saying that, yep, this tag for Explorer and WinLogon processes correctly marked Explorer as this tag, success. Doing this sort of stuff, if you want to, allows you to go back and look at this automatic tagging retroactively and determine, you know what, half these tags are incorrect anyway, or maybe these three are being misclassified and they should actually be tagged as something else. It's an easy way to kind of get more insight into what's going on in your operations and make sure they evolve over time. Now, let's say we wanted to edit this. If you want to edit any of the existing tags or add new ones, you click the little tag icon here, And now you can see that we're looking at this Explorer tag with the source being Mythic scripting. Here's that link to that aggressor script that I pulled this data from. And here you can see the JSON data, correct, true. So, I mean, we could always change that correct, false, hit submit. And now when we click on it, we see correct, false. Pretty easy. If you want to add a new tag, simply come up here and click new. You can select any of the existing tag types that we saw before on that tags page. Let's say, I don't know, maybe this is also a browser. It's not, but let's just say. You can provide as much or as little data as you want. You could just leave it as here. You could put, any data that you want. This down here for the URL will become a clickable link. May not go anywhere if you don't actually provide a valid URL, but it is what it is. Click submit, and now that pops up here. And we can click it and see our data. Pretty easy. But this is also just looking at data within this process browser. We can see this in a lot of different places though. So if we come up here to our search operation, this tagging happens for tasks, files, credentials, processes, file browser, screenshots, like all sorts of stuff can get these tags to make it a bit easier to see kind of what's going on more holistically. So if we look at tasks, for example, in a previous video, we saw that you can search for output and command parameters and all sorts of stuff. We can also search for tags. Here we can see that we have 3 tasks that are tagged, 1 with test, 2 with objective 1. You might have more than that, and so you can filter it down and say, I only want to see tasks that have the tag for an objective. Maybe it's objective 1, 2, 3, whatnot, but just have objective. And now you get filtered down that way. You can also apply this to files. So if we come over here and we search for downloads that have a tag, so here we have downloads that have a tag, we see that we, in a previous video, downloaded this Poseidon TCP binary. This was our agent. So we have this tagged as agent. Makes it pretty easy to see, oh, yeah, okay, that was just my agent, move on. You can add tags for already processed, didn't contain useful information, like what have you, to make it easier for future operators to, at a glance, go through files that maybe everybody has been downloading and see whether or not it's worthwhile for them to also look at them. Of course, this applies to your uploads and file browser data. So here, if we look at all of our file browser data, you can see that these 2 files specifically have been tagged with our agent tag, whereas the path leading up to it doesn't have any tags. So pretty easy to see that. Same with whenever we're looking at processes. This is the same sort of stuff we were looking at before. You can see here we have all these same sorts of tags. Again, all of them you can click and see why and where, and click to edit if you want to as well. Here, let's click delete and remove this overall. So it's gone. And now, because this isn't live streamed like the active callbacks page, we click search again, and now that tag is gone. If you don't want to look specifically by the type of object, so by tasks or credential data or whatnot, you want to look for tags across everything, that's where this tags search comes into play. So here we're specifically looking at tags and then pulling out their associated data. So in this case, we have this browser tag that's tagged on process browser data. Here we have an agent one that's tagged on file downloads, file browsers. Here's a tag that's on credential data. Right? You can see this across all sorts of things within Mythic. And of course, you can filter up here too and say, I only want to see, again, things for my objective maybe. And it pulls it out here. So we have these things tagged for objective 1 across the process browser, credential data, and tasks. You could even say, you know what, I want to search not by tag type, but by source. Which things were tagged via Mythic? So like Mythic scripting. Here you can see all those process browsers that we saw with the various tags added in there as part of Mythic scripting. So it's pretty easy to go through and start filtering out this data, especially if you do this more wide scale programmatically to really enrich and give operators insight into what's going on in your operation. So this has just been a quick overview of tagging and kind of how you can utilize it to really bring forth and help operators as they go throughout doing their operations.